I never thought my husband would change the locks, but let me back up. This all started when my son turned 16 and we got a phone call that flipped our world upside down. Our son had just turned 16. His girlfriend, she was almost 17, they broke up about a month before the call. 3 weeks ago her parents called us. She was pregnant, slightly showing. The dates matched up with our son's relationship. My wife and I went into full panic mode. We waited a couple days before telling our son. He didn't know. The moment we told him, he said it flat, "It's not mine, I never fucked her." I didn't believe him at first. I knew he was active. He'd come to me asking for condoms and I'd always provided them. But he kept insisting they never did it. He cheated on her, he said. I had a heart-to-heart with him and I started to believe him. He said he always rapped and he'd ask me for restocks. My wife didn't believe a word. Both families met. My wife started the conversation already accepting our son was the father, trying to figure out funding solutions. My son spoke up again, angry, saying it wasn't his baby because they never had sex. Then he made a comment I'll rephrase. He said they only ever did a certain act that couldn't result in a baby, and it was unsatisfactory, so he never went any further with her. I raged at him for being a shithead. His ex-girlfriend admitted they rarely did anything, but she explained the event, the when and where, and I had to admit it sounded believable. I knew my son was a complete liar. I knew he was a dog, but I still believed him. My wife was furious with me. She said I was playing into his nonsense, part of the boy culture. She said children born out of such denial would only suffer. She kept pushing me to force a paternity test to make him take responsibility. And then things got worse. We were sitting at the dinner table a week later and my son asked to talk. He was shaking. He told us the truth. He wasn't cheating on his girlfriend with another girl. He was cheating on her with a guy, a boy from his school. They'd been together for months. He never had sex with his girlfriend because he wasn't attracted to her that way. The baby wasn't his because he couldn't have gotten her pregnant, but he also didn't want to out himself to everyone. My wife went silent. I didn't scream either. I just sat there and thought about all the times I'd called him a dog, a shithead, a liar. And he was, but not for the reason I thought. I hugged him. My wife took longer. She finally said she needed time. That night she told me I had enabled his behavior by not believing the girl. She said I should have pushed harder. I said our son was terrified and we were the ones who made him hide this. We fought for hours. She still hasn't forgiven me for trusting our son over the ex-girlfriend. And honestly, I don't know if I forgive myself for how I handled it either. But that story was just the beginning. Another story I found on Reddit hit even closer to home, and it involves something I never expected to experience: watching my husband undress with his ex-wife at our own son's birthday party. I'm a 27-year-old man, married to Peter for 3 years, together for 6 before that. He's 37. He has an ex-wife, Allison, same age as him, divorced a year before we met. We adopted a son together, Jack, who's 7 now. I love Jack like he's my own because he is. I knew Peter was bisexual. I had no problem with that. I had no problem with Allison either. But his family. They're homophobic, always telling Peter he should get back together with Allison and leave the gay nonsense behind. 2 weeks ago it was Jack's birthday. We went to Peter's hometown to celebrate with his family. I knew his mother would be difficult, but I didn't want to ruin Jack's day. So when Allison showed up in the middle of the party, invited by my mother-in-law, I stayed quiet. I spent the whole time with Jack, playing with him and his cousins like I was fine. When it was time to cut the cake, I noticed Peter and Allison weren't there. I went inside to look for them. I found them in Peter's old bedroom. They were taking their clothes off. I stood there in shock. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just left and went back to the party. I cut the cake. Jack opened presents. I smiled. I refused to make my son's birthday about me. Then Allison and Peter came back down. Peter pulled me aside and said I shouldn't have cut the cake without him. It was disrespectful. I stared at him and said, "I'm sorry, I just thought you'd be too busy getting into your ex-wife's pants." He went quiet. I took Jack and left for the hotel. I put Jack to bed and then I collapsed. I called my sister. I told her everything. Peter called me that night. He said it was a mistake, that Allison had come onto him and he was weak. He said he loved me. He said his family had pressured him. He said it would never happen again, but I couldn't stop seeing them, the image of their clothes coming off in that bedroom, the way he looked at me when I called him out. I stayed at the hotel for 2 days. Peter kept calling. His mother called too, screaming that I was overreacting, that Allison was just comforting him because I was so cold and distant. I hung up. Jack asked why we weren't going home. I told him Daddy needed some time. I didn't tell him the truth. When I finally went back home, Peter had changed the locks. I stood outside our front door, keys in my hand, and they didn't work. I rang the bell. Peter opened it and said he needed space. He said I was being dramatic and that I needed to forgive him if I wanted to keep our family together. He said if I didn't sign a post-nup agreeing that Allison could be involved in Jack's life, he'd divorce me and take full custody. I laughed, then I cried, then I walked away. That was 2 weeks ago. I'm staying at a friend's place. Jack is with me half the time. Peter's lawyer sent papers. I'm fighting them. But the worst part isn't the legal battle. It's knowing that my husband, the man I trusted, the man I helped raise our son with, chose his ex-wife over me in front of everyone, then locked me out of our home because I refused to pretend it was okay. I don't know how this ends, but I know I'm not going to sign anything that makes me a doormat. And then there's another story from someone else that made me realize how deep family betrayal can go. My sister-in-law's ex proposed to me. Yes, you read that right, and it got her banned from the family. Let me tell you how this whole thing with my sister-in-law started. My name is not important, but I'm 27 and I'm engaged to a man named George. He's 38. My brother David is married to a woman named Ella, and Ella used to date George for 6 months 4 years ago. That's the part nobody told me until it was too late. When I first met George 2 years ago, I had no idea he was Ella's ex. I just knew he seemed different. He was quiet, kept to himself, but when he started talking to me, something clicked. He told me later he felt the same way. But here's the thing, George had a past. He partied hard, did drugs, wasn't reliable. That all ended when he started liking me. He quit drinking cold turkey, quit all the substances, started going to therapy, completely changed his life. And I was with him through every step of that healing. I was proud of him. We built a healthy, amazing relationship. But Ella, she was already married to my brother David by then. She married him 6 or 7 months after she broke up with George. So their whole relationship, her dating George, breaking up, meeting my brother, getting married, all that happened in like a year and a couple months. Fast, suspiciously fast. Looking back, when Ella found out I was dating George, she lost it. I mean, completely lost it. She started spreading lies, told everyone George was grooming me. I was 25 when we got together, he was 36. That's not grooming, that's a 10-year age gap between two adults, but she said it anyway. Then she said George was abusing me, trying to get me to become an addict like him. None of it was true. George had been sober for over a year by then, clean, going to meetings, seeing a therapist, but Ella didn't care. She wanted to destroy us. My brother David believed her at first. He's always been protective of me, but he also loved Ella. So when she came crying to him saying George was dangerous, David confronted me. I told him the truth. I showed him George's therapy receipts, his AA attendance chips. David was skeptical, but he said he'd talk to Ella. She denied everything, said I was lying, said George was manipulating me. That went on for months. The holidays were the worst. Thanksgiving at my parents' house. Ella refused to sit at the same table as me if George was there. My mom tried to keep the peace, said maybe George could eat in the kitchen. I told her no. If George wasn't welcome, I wasn't coming. My dad took my side. That was the first big fight. Ella screamed at me, called me a homewrecker, said I was ruining the family. I just sat there and took it. Then Christmas came. George proposed to me on Christmas Eve. It was small, just the two of us at his apartment. He got down on one knee and said he wanted to spend the rest of his life with me. I said yes. We were both crying. It was the happiest moment of my life. But the next day at my parents' house for Christmas dinner, Ella found out. David had seen the ring on my finger and congratulated me. Ella went pale. She pulled me aside and said, "You stole my ex. You're a whore. I hope you get what you deserve." I told her she divorced George. She married my brother. She had no claim. She slapped me right there in my parents' kitchen. My dad saw. He told her to leave. That's when things really escalated. Ella started telling everyone that George had only proposed to me to get back at her. That I was a pawn, that he still loved her. She even messaged George herself and he showed me the text. "You think you can marry her and I'll be jealous? I'm already married to her brother. You lost." George didn't respond. He just blocked her. But Ella didn't stop. She went to my brother and said I was sleeping with George before she and George had even broken up. That would have been impossible. I didn't even know George existed back then. But David started doubting me again. He asked me straight up, "Did you ever meet George before 2 years ago?" I said no. He looked at me for a long time, then he said, "I believe you, but I need proof." So I got proof. George still had his old phone with timestamps. He showed David their entire text history. The last text from Ella to George was the day they broke up, and it was nasty. She called him a loser, said he'd never amount to anything. Then nothing until a year later when she congratulated him on getting sober. And then nothing until I started dating him and she sent him a message saying, "I hope she knows what she's getting into." George ignored it. David finally saw the pattern. Ella wasn't over George. She never was. She married David on the rebound, and when she saw George was serious about me, she couldn't handle it. The final blow came at my birthday dinner last month. My parents hosted. Ella showed up uninvited. She walked in and saw George sitting next to me holding my hand. She started screaming, called me a slut, called George a pedophile. My mom tried to calm her down, but Ella pushed her own mother-in-law. My dad told her to get out. She refused. She said she wasn't leaving until I admitted I was a homewrecker. I didn't say anything. I just looked at my brother. David stood up. He said, "Ella, you need to leave. And you're not welcome back until you apologize to my sister and George." She laughed. She said, "You're picking her over me. I'm your wife." He said, "I'm picking the truth over lies. You've been lying to me since the day we met." She left. She hasn't spoken to David since. My brother is staying with me and George for now, trying to figure out what to do. He says he wants a divorce. My parents support him. My sister-in-law is banned from all family events. And the proposal. George and I are planning a wedding for next spring. Ella's not invited. I don't feel bad about it. She had her chance to be a decent person and she chose bitterness. That's not my problem anymore. But not every family betrayal comes from in-laws. Sometimes it's the people you trust the most who break your heart in ways you never expected. Like the mother who chose her husband over her own son's truth. I never thought I'd have to defend my own son against my wife. But here we are. Our son just turned 16. He'd been dating a girl, also 16, almost 17, for about 6 months. They broke up about a month ago. I thought it was just typical teenage drama. They'd fight over stupid stuff, make up, break up again. I didn't pay much attention. Then 3 weeks ago we got a call from her parents. She was pregnant and she was already showing a little. The dates lined up with when they were together. My wife and I panicked, full panic mode. We waited a couple days before telling our son. He didn't know. When we told him, he immediately said, "It's not mine, I never fucked her." I didn't believe him at first. I knew he was active, asked me for condoms before and I'd given them to him, but he kept insisting. He said he always wrapped up and he'd asked for restocks multiple times. I started to wonder. My wife, though, she didn't believe him at all. She said he was lying, that he was just trying to avoid responsibility. She said I was part of boy culture, covering for him. I told her to wait, let's get all the facts. We had a meeting with her family. Both sets of parents, the ex-girlfriend and our son. My wife started the conversation already accepting that our son was the father. She was talking about funding, solutions, maybe keeping the baby or adoption. Our son spoke up again, angry, saying it wasn't his. He said they never had sex. Then he made a comment I'll never forget. He said they only ever did a certain act that couldn't result in a baby and it was so unsatisfactory he never went any further with her. I raged at him for that. What kind of kid says that? But I still believed him. The ex-girlfriend admitted they rarely did anything. She described one specific event, the when and where, and it sounded believable. But our son insisted it wasn't him. I sat there, caught between my wife's rage and my son's denial. I didn't know what to think. My wife was furious with me. She said I was enabling him, that I was part of the problem. She said children born into this kind of denial end up hurting everyone. I tried to stay calm, but I could feel the marriage cracking. Then our son did something I didn't expect. He asked to talk to me alone. He looked scared. He said, "Dad, I need to tell you something." I didn't want to say it in front of Mom because she'll freak out. He told me he was gay. He said he had been seeing a boy from school for months, and that was who he cheated on his ex with. He said they never had sex with the girl, not the way that makes babies. He said the only reason he asked for condoms was because of his boyfriend. He was terrified my wife would find out. I didn't scream, I just sat there and listened. Then I asked him if he was sure the baby wasn't his. He said yes, absolutely. He said he would take a paternity test to prove it. I told him I believed him. That night I told my wife. She didn't take it well. She said our son was lying again, that he was just trying to get out of responsibility by claiming to be gay. She said, "He's not gay, he had a girlfriend, he's just saying that to manipulate you." I said, "He's our son, why would he lie about this?" She said, "Because he's a liar just like his father." That stung. We argued for hours. She said I was destroying our family by not forcing him to take responsibility. I said I would never force my son to accept a child that wasn't his. We scheduled a paternity test. It took 2 weeks. I stayed up every night hoping I was right, terrified I was wrong. My wife barely spoke to me. The ex-girlfriend's family was nasty. They called us deadbeats, said we were trying to ditch responsibility. The test came back not his, 0% probability. I called my wife, she didn't answer. I texted her the results. She replied, "Fine, you were right, but you still chose him over me." I didn't know what to say. I had chosen the truth over her narrative. I still don't think that was wrong. Since then, our son has come out to the rest of the family. My parents were supportive. My wife's parents, not so much. They said he was too young to know that it was a phase. My wife hasn't spoken to me in a week. She sleeps in the guest room. She says I ruined our marriage by not siding with her. Our son is doing okay. He's seeing his boyfriend, going to therapy. He's relieved the paternity thing is over, but my marriage is in shambles. I keep thinking, was I supposed to lie to keep the peace? Was I supposed to force my son to raise a baby that wasn't his just so my wife could feel right? I don't know, but I do know my son trusts me now. That's something. Even if my wife never forgives me, at least he knows his father believes him. I never thought I'd have to defend my son against his own mother. But that pain was nothing compared to what came next. This is a story about trust, betrayal, and the day I found my husband in bed with his ex-wife at our son's birthday party. I'm 27, male, married to Peter for 3 years, together for 6. He's 37. We have a son, Jack, 7 years old, adopted after we got married. I love that kid like he's my own blood. He is my own. Peter is bisexual. I've always known that, never had a problem with it. His ex-wife, Allison, same age as him, 37. I had zero issues with her either until I caught her with her tongue down my husband's throat in his childhood bedroom. The weekend started normal. We drove up to Peter's hometown for Jack's 7th birthday party. Peter's parents wanted to host at their house. I was excited. Jack was so happy, bouncing in the back seat, listing all the presents he hoped to get. I didn't notice anything off until we pulled into the driveway. Peter's mom had this weird smile on her face, like she knew something I didn't. She hugged Peter too long, whispered something in his ear. I ignored it. I thought maybe she was just happy to see us. The party was set for early afternoon. I spent the morning setting up decorations, blowing up balloons, putting out plates and cups. Jack helped me arrange the cake on the kitchen table. It was a superhero theme. He wanted Spider-Man. I remember the frosting was smudged because we'd bought it from a bakery that messed up the order. Jack didn't care. He was just happy to have cake. Then the guests started arriving. Cousins, a few classmates from school, and then around an hour in, the doorbell rang. I was in the living room helping Jack open presents. I heard Peter's mom say, "Oh, look who's here," and I didn't think much of it. Then I saw Allison walk through the door. I felt the air leave the room. She had on a tight dress way too formal for a kid's party. Her hair was done. She smiled at me like we were old friends. I didn't say anything. I didn't want to ruin Jack's birthday, so I just turned back to the presents, helped him rip the wrapping paper, and tried to act normal. I kept an eye on Peter. He saw Allison and his face went pale. Then he recovered, gave her a quick hug, and whispered something. I couldn't hear it over the noise. I told myself it was fine. She was his ex-wife, but they were adults. They could be civil. An hour went by. I played with Jack and his cousins, built a Lego tower, let him put a sticker on my shirt. I checked my watch. Cake time was coming up. I looked around for Peter. He wasn't in the living room. I checked the kitchen. Not there. I asked his mom where he went. She shrugged, said maybe he's getting something from his old room. I should have known. I walked down the hallway to Peter's childhood bedroom. The door was cracked open. I heard a muffled noise. I pushed it open just enough to see inside. They were on the bed. His shirt was off. Hers was halfway unbuttoned. They were kissing like teenagers, my husband with his ex-wife. I stood there for maybe 5 seconds, long enough to see him pull her closer, long enough to see her hand on his belt. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just turned around and walked back to the party. I went straight to the kitchen, picked up the cake knife, and started cutting the cake. Jack came running over. He asked where his dad was. I said, he'll be here soon. Let's eat cake while it's fresh. I served every kid a slice. I gave the adults their pieces. People were smiling. No one noticed my hands shaking. The cake was half eaten when Peter and Allison came back. Peter looked flustered. His hair was a mess. He saw the half-eaten cake and his face twisted. He walked over to me, pulled me aside into the hallway, and said, "Why did you cut the cake without me? That's disrespectful. That's my son's birthday." I stared at him. I kept my voice calm. I said, "I'm sorry. I just thought you'd be too busy getting into your ex-wife's pants." His face went white. He didn't say anything. I walked away, found Jack, told him it was time to go. I grabbed our bags, said goodbye to the family, and drove back to the hotel. Jack asked why we left early. I told him Daddy had to stay behind to talk to Grandma about something. He was tired anyway. He fell asleep in the back seat. At the hotel, I put Jack in pajamas and tucked him into bed. Then I sat on the bathroom floor and finally cried. I didn't make a sound. I just let the tears fall. I stayed up all night. I had Peter's phone number, but I didn't call. I had my own phone. I started looking through old messages. Then I looked through his social media. I found messages between him and Allison going back years, not just friendly, dirty. They had been sleeping together on and off since before we got married. I found pictures, dates, times. The worst part, I found a conversation where Allison said, "You know Jack is really yours, right?" And Peter replied, "I know, but we can't tell him. He'll take everything." I nearly threw up. Jack was adopted. We had the papers. But Peter and Allison had been together before I came along. Allison had gotten pregnant. Peter convinced her to give the baby up for adoption, and then he and I adopted that same child through an agency. He never told me. I was raising my husband's biological son from his ex-wife. I did confront Peter right away. I waited until we got home. I handed him a folder of screenshots. He tried to deny it. He said I was reading into things. I said, "I saw you in that bedroom. I have proof you've been cheating for years, and I have proof that Jack is yours." He broke down. He admitted everything. He said Allison had been blackmailing him. She threatened to tell Jack the truth if Peter didn't keep sleeping with her. He said he was scared. He said he loved me. I told him to pack a bag. He asked if we could work it out. I said, "You lied to me about my own son." My son, I'm not forgiving that. I filed for divorce. I kept the house. I got full custody of Jack because Peter's name was on the adoption papers as a co-parent, but the court saw the infidelity and the lying. They said it was in the child's best interest to stay with me. I told Jack the truth in therapy. I said his birth mother was someone else, but that I was still his dad. He cried. He asked if I still loved him. I held him and said, "More than anything, you are my son always." Peter tried to visit. Jack didn't want to see him. I didn't force it. Peter's family called me a homewrecker. They said I ruined Peter's life. I laughed. I said he ruined his own life, and he almost ruined Jack's. The last I heard, Peter and Allison are back together. She moved into his apartment. I don't care. I have Jack. I have my sanity. And I never ever trust someone who says they love you while they're undressing for their ex-wife in the middle of their son's birthday party. That was the moment I learned that blood doesn't make a family, but also that some people will drain you dry if you let them. I don't let them anymore. I never thought I'd have to defend my son against his own mother over a pregnancy that wasn't even his. Our son had just turned 16. He was a good kid mostly. He had a girlfriend. She was 16, almost 17. They'd been dating for about 8 months. I thought they were cute together. He'd ask me for condoms and I'd give him the talk every time. Be safe, be respectful, don't be a dumbass. He always said yes, Dad. I thought he was being responsible. Then they broke up. It was messy, but I figured that's teenage drama. About 3 weeks after the breakup, we get a call from her parents. They said their daughter was pregnant about 8 weeks along. The dates lined up with when our son was still with her. My wife panicked. I panicked too. We spent 2 days freaking out trying to figure out what to do. We finally told our son. He looked me straight in the eye and said, "It's not mine. I never fucked her." I didn't believe him at first. I know he was active. I'd bought him condoms multiple times. I sat him down and had a real heart-to-heart. He kept insisting. Then he finally admitted something that made my stomach drop. He said, "Dad, I cheated on her. But not with a girl." He told me he was gay. He'd been seeing a boy from the next town over. He said he and his ex-girlfriend never actually had sex. They did other stuff, but nothing that could get her pregnant. He said it was unsatisfactory for both of them, so they just stopped trying. I believed him. I don't know why, but I did. Maybe because I could see the fear in his eyes. He was terrified of telling his mom. My wife didn't believe him at all. She said I was enabling him, part of some boy culture where sons can do no wrong. We had a family meeting with the girl's parents. My wife walked in already accepting that our son was the father. She started talking about funding, about maybe them keeping the baby, about child support. Our son stood up and said again, "It's not mine." Then he said something I have to rephrase. He said they only did one specific act that cannot result in a pregnancy, and he never went further with her because he wasn't into it. The girl admitted they rarely did it, but she gave the date and place of one specific time. She sounded believable. My son looked like he was going to throw up. I told the group that I believed my son. My wife lost it. She screamed at me in front of everyone. She said I was choosing my son over her, that I was a bad husband, that I was letting him get away with everything. I told her we needed to wait for a paternity test before making any decisions. She refused. She said we should just accept it and move on. I didn't back down. I paid for the test myself. It came back negative. Our son was not the father. Turns out the girl had been seeing another guy at the same time. She didn't know who the father was. She later admitted it might have been someone else, but she was scared. My son was relieved, but he also came out to his mom that same week. She didn't take it well. She said he was just confused, that he needed to see a therapist, that this was a phase. I told her to back off. She didn't. We had a huge fight. She accused me of turning our son gay. I said that's not how it works. She said I was never supportive of her, that I always took his side. I said I took the truth side. The paternity test proved he was right. She said that didn't matter, that I should have had her back no matter what. We're still married, but it's not the same. She barely talks to our son now. He spends most of his time with me. I'm trying to get him into a support group. His ex-girlfriend had the baby. The real father stepped up. I'm just glad my son isn't trapped in that situation, but I lost my wife's trust over it. She thinks I betrayed her. I think I protected my kid. But that wasn't the only family drama that exploded around me. There was also my sister-in-law, who ended up getting herself banned from every holiday for the rest of her life. 27, female. My fiancé is George, 38. My older brother is David and his wife is Ella. Ella is also George's ex. They dated 4 years ago for about 6 months. She wanted to get married and have kids. George was in a bad place back then, partying, doing drugs, not reliable. He ended things because he didn't want that life with her. She was furious. Then she met my brother David and they got married within 7 months, from breakup to marriage in just over a year. I met George 2 years ago at a friend's party. I had no idea he was Ella's ex. He was different by then, sober, going to therapy, working on himself. We clicked instantly. He told me about his past, about the drugs, about how he had changed because he wanted to be a better person. I believed him. I was there for his whole healing journey. We fell in love. Ella lost her mind when she found out. She started spreading lies. She told everyone George was grooming me. I was 25, he was 36, and that's not grooming. She said he was abusing me, that he was trying to turn me into an addict like he used to be. She told my parents I was in danger. My brother believed her. They cut me off for a while. I didn't care. George and I kept building our life. He proposed to me 6 months ago at a family dinner. My parents were there. My brother and Ella were there too because my mom insisted on keeping the peace. George got down on one knee in the living room. I said yes. Everyone clapped except Ella. She just stared. Then George did something I didn't expect. He pulled out a second box. He said, "This is for your brother, actually." I wanted to ask his permission properly. He handed my brother a note. Inside it said, "I'm sorry for the past. I hope you can forgive me." My brother looked confused. Ella grabbed the note and read it. She turned red. She threw the note on the floor and screamed, "You're still trying to steal my life." She started yelling that George only proposed to me to get back at her, that I was just a pawn, that our whole relationship was fake. My brother tried to calm her down. She shoved him. She called me a homewrecker. She said I married her sloppy seconds. I stood up and told her to leave. She didn't. My dad ended up calling the police. The next day, my mom called a family meeting. She said Ella was no longer welcome at any family events until she apologized. Ella refused. She texted me that night saying I ruined her marriage, that my brother was going to leave her because I turned him against her. I blocked her. My brother stayed with her for another month, but it fell apart. He found out she had been lying about other things too, fake accusations against George, hiding her own debts. They divorced. Ella moved back to her parents' house. Last I heard, she's trying to get my brother to take her back. He's not interested. George and I got married last month. My brother was my best man. My parents walked me down the aisle. We didn't invite Ella. The wedding was small, but it was perfect. I don't regret a thing. I'm married to the love of my life, and my sister-in-law is a bitter memory. Some people just can't handle seeing someone else happy with the person they lost. That's her problem, not mine. Then there was the time I found out my husband was screwing his ex-wife at our son's birthday party. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just walked back outside and cut the cake without him. I'm 27, he's 37. We've been married 3 years, together for 6. He has an ex-wife, Allison, same age as him. They divorced a year before we met. My husband is bisexual, which I've always been fine with. I never had a problem with Allison either. She seemed like a normal person. The problem was his family. They're homophobic as hell. They never accepted our marriage. His mom would always make comments about how he should go back to Allison, how he was just confused, how our son needed a real mother figure. Our son Jack is 7. We adopted him after we got married. I love that kid like he's my own blood. He calls me dad. We have a good life together. We live in a nice house. I work in IT. My husband is a contractor. We were happy, or I thought we were. 2 weeks ago, we went to his hometown for Jack's birthday. My mother-in-law wanted to throw a party at her house. I didn't want to go. I knew she'd pull something, but my husband insisted. He said it would be good for Jack to see his grandparents. I agreed. I should have listened to my gut. The party was going fine. Jack was playing with his cousins. I was grilling burgers. Around 4 o'clock, I noticed my husband and Allison weren't there. I asked my mother-in-law where Peter was. She said he was inside getting more drinks. I walked into the house. It was quiet. I checked the kitchen, the living room, the bathroom, no one. Then I heard a noise from the back bedroom, Peter's old childhood bedroom. I opened the door. They were both half undressed. He was pulling down his pants. She was unhooking her bra. They were kissing. I stood there for maybe 3 seconds. They didn't even see me. I closed the door quietly and walked back outside. My hands were shaking. I felt like I was going to throw up, but Jack was running over to me asking when we could cut the cake. I smiled and said, right now. I cut the cake. I handed out slices. I took pictures. I laughed at the kids' jokes. I acted like everything was fine because it was Jack's birthday and I wasn't going to ruin that for him, not for anything. People started leaving around 6. That's when Peter and Allison finally came back downstairs. They looked normal. He came over to me and whispered, "Why did you cut the cake without me? That was disrespectful." I looked at him and said, "I thought you were too busy getting into your ex-wife's pants." He went white. He didn't say anything. I grabbed Jack's hand, walked to the car and drove to our hotel. I put Jack to bed, then sat in the bathroom and cried for an hour. I didn't sleep that night. I just kept replaying the image in my head. The next morning, Peter showed up at the hotel. He knocked on the door. I let him in because Jack was awake and I didn't want a scene. He tried to apologize. He said it was a mistake, that Allison came on to him, that he was drunk, that he didn't mean it. I told him to leave. He said he wanted to talk. I said we could talk after Jack was with his grandparents. He left. I called my mom. She told me to leave him. She said once a cheater, always a cheater. She said I deserved better. I didn't know what to do. I thought about our marriage, about Jack, about everything we built. I thought about how I loved him. I also thought about how I'd never be able to look at him the same way. I stayed at the hotel for 2 more days. He kept calling and texting. I ignored most of them. He sent long paragraphs about how sorry he was, how he would do anything to fix it, how he would cut off his family. I didn't respond to any of it. When I finally came home, he had moved some of his stuff out. He was staying at his brother's. He came over that night and we talked for real. He told me the whole story. Allison had been texting him for months. She said she still loved him. She said she regretted the divorce. He said he never responded, but at the party, she cornered him in the bedroom. She kissed him. He said he kissed her back. He said it was a moment of weakness. He said he didn't want to lose me. I asked him why he didn't stop. He didn't have an answer. I told him I needed space. He said he would give it. He left. That was 2 weeks ago. He's been calling every day, leaving voicemails. Jack asks where Daddy is. I don't know what to tell him. I don't know if I can forgive him. I don't know if I even want to. Part of me wants to take him back. Part of me wants to burn everything down. I loved him. I really did. But that image of him with her in the room where he grew up, the room where he first kissed her, probably, it's burned into my brain. I don't know if I can unsee it. I'm seeing a therapist now. I'm trying to figure out what I want. Jack needs stability. I can't just rip him away from Peter. But I also can't stay in a marriage where I don't trust my husband. I don't know what the right answer is. I just know I don't want to feel this way anymore. And then there was the time my 16-year-old son got his ex-girlfriend pregnant, or so we thought. Our son just turned 16. He had a girlfriend who was almost 17. They broke up about a month ago. Then 3 weeks ago, her parents called us. She was pregnant. She was already showing a little. The timeline matched up with when they were together. My wife and I panicked. We didn't know what to do. We waited a couple days before telling our son. He didn't know. When we told him, he looked us straight in the eye and said, "It's not mine. I never fucked her." I didn't believe him at first. I knew he was active. He asked me for condoms before. I gave him the talk, made sure he was being safe, but he kept saying they never did it. He said he cheated on her. That got my attention. I had a heart-to-heart with him, really grilled him. He's a little shithead sometimes, but I started to believe him. He said he always wrapped up and he asked for restocks. He was adamant. My wife didn't believe him at all. She thought I was covering for him. She said I was part of the boy culture, whatever that means. Both families met up. My wife started the conversation by just accepting our son was the father. She was already talking about funding, solutions, all that. My son spoke up again. He was genuinely angry this time. He said it wasn't his baby because they never had sex. Then he made a comment I'm going to rephrase here. He said they only ever did a certain act that can't result in a baby, and it was unsatisfactory, so he never went any further with her. I was furious at him for being so crude, but I still believed him. His ex-girlfriend admitted they rarely did it, but she described one specific event, the when and where. It was believable. I know my son is a liar sometimes. I know he's a dog, but something in my gut told me he was telling the truth. My wife was furious. She said I was enabling his nonsense. She told me I was choosing him over her. We argued for days. She wanted to do a paternity test, but the girl's parents were resistant. My son kept insisting we get one. He said he would take it right now. The tension got worse. My wife started crying every night. She said our son ruined that girl's life. She said I was a bad father. I started to doubt myself. Maybe I was in denial. Maybe my son was lying. Then my son came to me one night. He was shaking. He said, "Dad, I need to tell you something. I've never told anyone I'm gay. I've been with a boy from school for months. That's why I broke up with her. I cheated on her with him." I sat down. I didn't scream. I just asked him if he was sure. He said yes. He started crying. I held him. I told him I loved him no matter what. Then I told my wife. She didn't believe me at first. She said I was making it up to protect him. I said, "Fine, let's do the paternity test. Let's prove it." The test came back negative. Our son was not the father. The girl's parents went silent. My wife was shocked. She apologized to me. She apologized to our son. She said she was just scared. She didn't know what to think. We found out later the girl had been with someone else after they broke up. She didn't know who the father was. She thought it was our son because he was her first, but it was. Our son came out to the rest of the family. Some were supportive, some weren't, but he's happier now. He's still with his boyfriend. They're careful. He still asks for condoms. I'm just glad we got the truth. My wife and I are in therapy. She's working on her trust issues. I'm working on not being so dismissive. We're a mess sometimes, but we're learning. And our son, he's doing okay. He's a good kid, just a little shithead sometimes. But he's my son, and I believe him. That whole mess made me realize how quickly things can spiral, but nothing could have prepared me for what happened with my sister-in-law. I'm 27, female. My fiancé, George, is 38. My older brother, David, is 35. And my sister-in-law, Ella, is 34. Ella is also George's ex-girlfriend. Yeah, it's a mess. George and Ella dated 4 years ago. They were together about 6 months. Ella wanted marriage and kids. George didn't. He was going through some stuff back then, partying, doing drugs, not exactly reliable. It ended badly. Ella couldn't make him settle down and she was bitter about it. Soon after they broke up, Ella met my brother David. They got married 6 or 7 months after they met, so in just over a year she went from dating George to being married to my brother. They moved fast. I met George 2 years ago. At that time, Ella was already married to David. I had no idea George was her ex. We met through mutual friends. He was different from what I'd heard about his past. By then, he had quit drinking, quit drugs, started therapy. He changed completely. He told me later that when he started feeling attracted to me, he knew he had to get his life together. He wanted to be worthy of a real relationship, and he did it all before we even started dating. I was 25 when we got together. He was 36. That's not grooming, no matter what anyone says. Our relationship was amazing. We were honest, supportive, healthy. I watched him heal. I was proud of him. Then Ella found out. She was already married to my brother, but she was furious. She couldn't stand that George was serious about me. She couldn't stand that he changed for me. She started spreading lies. She told everyone George was grooming me. She said he was abusing me. She said he was trying to turn me into an addict like him. None of it was true. George had been clean for over a year by then. He went to therapy every week. He was a completely different person. My family was split. My parents didn't know what to believe. My brother David was caught in the middle. He loved his wife, but he also saw how happy I was. He knew George had changed. But Ella kept pushing. She started calling me, left voicemails, texted my friends. She tried to get my coworkers to talk to me. I blocked her number. She started showing up at places I went, the grocery store, the gym, my favorite coffee shop. It felt like she was stalking me. I told George. He wanted to confront her, but I said no. I didn't want drama. I just wanted her to leave us alone. Then about a month ago, George proposed to me. We were at a restaurant. He got down on one knee. It was perfect. I said yes. We were both crying. It was the happiest moment of my life. The next day, I posted the news on social media. I was excited. I wanted to share it with everyone. Ella lost her mind. She started commenting on my post, called me a homewrecker, said I stole her ex, said George only proposed because he couldn't have her. I deleted the comments. She made fake accounts and kept posting. I had to lock down my profile. Then she showed up at my brother's house when I was there. She screamed at me in front of my parents. She said I ruined her life. She said George was supposed to be with her, not with me. She said I was a whore. My mom tried to calm her down. My dad told her to leave. She refused. My brother David looked at her. He said, "Ella, you need to stop. You're married to me. You have a husband. Why do you care so much about George?" She didn't have an answer. That's when I told David the whole truth. I showed him the messages, the voicemails, the stalking. I told him about the lies she spread. He went pale. He said he didn't know it was that bad. I said, "Now you know." David told Ella she needed therapy. She refused. She said everyone was against her. She said I was manipulating the family. She said George was still in love with her. George and I went over to David's house a few days later. We wanted to try to make peace. Ella was there. She started yelling again. George stood up and said, "Ella, I never loved you. I never wanted to marry you. I'm with her. Get over it." She slapped him. David pulled her away. He told her to pack a bag and leave. She screamed that we were all abusing her. She called the cops. The cops came. They calmed everyone down. No one pressed charges. But David told her she couldn't come back until she got help. She went to her mom's house. She started calling David every hour, texting him, threatening to ruin his reputation, saying she would tell everyone he abused her too. David was scared. He didn't know what to do. I told my parents everything. They believed me. They said Ella was unstable. They said they were sorry they ever doubted George. My mom called Ella's mom. She said Ella needed serious help. Ella's mom got defensive. She said we were all against her daughter. My mom said, your daughter is stalking my daughter. She is making false accusations. She hit my future son-in-law. If you don't get her help, we're pressing charges. Ella's mom went quiet. She said she would talk to her. A week later, David filed for divorce. He said he couldn't be married to someone who would lie and threaten him. He said he needed to protect himself. Ella called me after she got served. She was crying. She said she was sorry. She said she knew she messed up. She said she was jealous. She said she always wanted what I had. I told her I accepted her apology, but I couldn't have her in my life. I said I needed space. She said she understood. Then she started calling again, left more voicemails. But this time she wasn't angry, she was sad. She said she was lonely. She said she missed George. I told her she needed to move on. George and I are still engaged. We're planning a wedding for next year. David is in therapy. He's doing better. He said he should have seen the signs earlier. But he was in love. He didn't want to believe she could be that toxic. We had a family meeting. My parents told everyone that Ella was no longer welcome at family events. My aunt and uncle tried to argue. My dad shut it down. He said, she made false accusations against George. She stalked my daughter. She hit him. She threatened my son. She is not family anymore. Some relatives were upset. They said we were being harsh. I said, you're welcome to spend time with her, but she will not be at any event I attend and she will not be near my wedding. That ended the discussion. I still get messages from her sometimes. I block each account. George wants to get a restraining order. I'm thinking about it, but I also hope she gets the help she needs. She was so obsessed with George that she destroyed her own marriage. She lost my brother. She lost her place in our family. She lost everything, and I don't think she even understands why. I'm not sorry for what happened. I didn't ask for any of this. I just fell in love with a man who changed his life, and I'm not going to apologize for that. Now I'm planning a wedding. George and I are happy. David is healing. My parents are supportive. And Ella, she's out of our lives. It's sad, but it's what had to happen. Sometimes you have to cut people out to protect yourself. That's what we did, and I don't regret it. That story reminded me of another one that really stuck with me. Different situation, but just as messy. AITAH for not siding with my wife over our son's ex-girlfriend's pregnancy. I never thought I'd be writing that, but here we are. Our son just turned 16. He had a girlfriend who was almost 17. They broke up about a month ago, then her parents told us she was pregnant. She was already showing a little. The dates lined up with their relationship. My wife and I panicked. We waited a couple days to tell our son. He didn't know. When we told him, he said flat out, it's not mine. I never fucked her. I know he's active. He's asked me for condoms before. But he kept insisting. He said they never did it. He said he cheated on her. I had a heart-to-heart with him. He's an absolute shithead, but I started to believe him. He said he always wraps up and he's come to me for restocks regularly. My wife didn't believe him at all. Both families met. My wife started the conversation already accepting our son was the father. She was talking about solutions, funding. My son spoke up again. He was genuinely angry. He said it wasn't his baby because they never had sex. Then he made a comment. I'll rephrase. Basically, they only did a certain act that can't cause pregnancy, and it was so unsatisfactory he never went further. I raged at him for that. But I still believed him. His ex-girlfriend admitted they rarely did it. She described the event, the time and place. It sounded believable too. I know my son is a liar. I know he's a dog, but I believed him. My wife was furious with me. She said I was enabling him. She said I was part of some boy culture nonsense. She wanted to push for a paternity test and force him to take responsibility. Then my son came to me alone. He was crying. He said, Dad, I need to tell you something. I didn't cheat on her with a girl. I cheated on her with a boy. I'm gay. I never touched her. I've been with my boyfriend for months. I sat there. I didn't scream. I just hugged him. I said, I believe you. We got the paternity test. It came back negative.